Good morning, Title I coordinators. Thank you for joining us this morning for our December webinar. I am Erin Sudduth, and I'm the Title I Part A Support and Improvement Branch Manager here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And I'm getting our presentation pulled up. Okay. As people are joining, just be sure that you have got your microphone muted and your camera turned off for the time being. That's just going to allow all of the participants to really focus on today's presentation. So we have a lot of information to share. I'm going to go ahead and get started. As always, if you have any questions or comments during the webinar, those of you joining us via Teams, and somebody has just joined and needs to mute themselves. Thank you. So those of you joining us through Teams, you can put those questions and comments in the chat. Those of you joining through the media portal can send an email to me at erin.sudduth@education.ky.gov. And the webinar, of course, is being recorded and will be posted to our Documents and Resources webpage either later today or sometime tomorrow. If you weren't able to join us for last month's webinar, that is up on our webpage, and we focused on obtaining and utilizing parent feedback. We looked at parent feedback for Title I Part A events and then for the Title I Part A program in general. We also reviewed some sample survey questions that districts or schools could take or modify to use in some feedback surveys. Taking a look at today's agenda, of course, we've got our usual announcements and reminders. We'll hit the December newsletter highlights really quickly to make sure you didn't miss any of those. And then we have kind of a special portion of the webinar. We have an introduction to Public Consulting Group, or PCG, and they're going to talk about the Title I Next product. Then our main focuses are going to be on planning for revised allocations, the upcoming release of census data to plan for next year, and then really looking at the difference between the census poverty percentage and the district poverty percentages. Our reminders for this morning, as we've been reminding you for the past several months, we want to make sure that you are monitoring that obligation of the current year funds, 310K. You want to make sure that you are on track to meet that 15% carryover limitation. So if we are using that approximate 5.66% obligated each month, then by the end of December, you should have about 34% that's been obligated so far. If you're a little below or a little above that, that's not a big deal. If you're significantly above or particularly significantly below that, you might want to set up some time with your finance officer just to look things over, see if everything is going like it should be. Maybe you need to make some revisions or something. And of course, be sure that you are checking the status of any open consolidated applications that are in GMAP, not just this year, and make sure that you've addressed any issues that have been noted on the consolidated checklist by KDE. We want to make sure that all applications have the status of KDE Consolidated Consultant Approved. Our December newsletter is also up on our webpage. We have an announcement about those tentative census poverty and hold harmless rates, and as I said, we'll be talking about that more later. We've got a little reminder in there about not using Title I funds to pay for entertainment costs. That's a big one this time of year with a lot of holiday celebrations. Just a little update about monitoring that we've selected all of our districts. In case you missed it, there was an article in ESEA Now about recording all of the required inventory information, so be sure to check that out. And then a reminder about signing up to go to the National ESEA Conference, either in person in Portland or virtually. So now I've mentioned in a couple webinars about the opportunity to opt in to a documentation storage system. And we have Jennifer Jones from PCG, and she's here to share some information about that program, Title I Next. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, and just let me know when you want me to click through your slides.
All righty, I have them up. Let's see here. And I made a couple of changes, Erin, and I should have sent you the updated version. Would you mind if I share my screen? Would that be okay, or would that not catch the recording?
I think it probably needs to stay on these ones.
Stay on these ones? Okay, all right, no problem. All right. Well, good morning and happy December to everyone that is on the call. My name is Jennifer Jones, and I am really excited to be in partnership with KDE to present the Title I Next solution. I do want to take the time to introduce a couple of my teammates who are also on the call. If you all could come off of camera, Cami, and there should be Claire and Jack, and not sure who else is on, Blake. And if I missed anyone else, please feel free to come off camera. But this is our fantastic public consulting group team. We do go by PCG, so it's a mouthful to say. And Cammie's going to tell you just a little bit about not only our company nationwide, but also more specifically about the work that we've done in Kentucky.
Thanks, Jennifer. We just wanted to share a little bit about the work that we do. We provide solutions that matter in education, healthcare, and human services. We have been around for about 35 plus years, since 1986, and we work with public sector agencies and organizations, both at federal, state, and local level. And we'll talk about some of the work that we do in Kentucky on the next slide. But mainly we work in our practice area of education. We work in with school districts and state education agencies to help them do the work that they need to do in order to access federal funds and other programs. We do everything from custom curriculum and professional learning to managing Title I, education, special education, case management, school-based Medicaid billing, things such as even direct student services and staff augmentation, as well as strategic planning and program reviews for anything from special education to your academic success and behavior issues, pretty much across the board. We have some sort of product or consulting service that can help with school districts. So if we can go to the next slide.
And Cami, if you just want to talk through the next slide, because I don't think that the Kentucky slide is
Sure.
in this deck, but if you just want to have it up
Sure.
on your screen and talk through it, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, just to talk a little bit about what we do in Kentucky. Currently, we have a statewide contract with KDE to provide administrative claiming for their school-based Medicaid program. We also have another statewide contract for a pilot of a digital wallet program. And we do a lot of work with Jefferson County Public Schools. They have implemented multiple modules that are within EdPlan, things such as Medicaid claiming, our health module, which records nursing services, behavior threat assessment module, and our document storage paperclip module that goes with EdPlan, as well as our university instructors area. They have contracted us to help them not to staff some resources in their classrooms to assist with their teachers and their aides. And then we also collaborated with some of the Kentucky education cooperatives to create a customized behavior tracker that matches with the Behavior Pass program. So we have several districts in the state that are utilizing that in their behavior program. And I believe that's it. Jennifer, if you'd like to take it back over.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we just wanted to provide everyone on the call this morning with, kind of a lens into what we have done nationally, but more importantly, a lens into what we are currently doing in Kentucky. And as Cami mentioned, we have quite a few opportunities there, and she is local. I'm actually in Ohio, so not too far from Kentucky, and my other teammates are kind of spread across the country. But as Aaron mentioned, our purpose this morning is to really announce and be excited about the fact that we've partnered with you all to provide Title I Next, which is a document management solution, and it is at no cost to all Kentucky districts. You can go ahead to the next slide. Thanks so much. So what is Title I Next? What is it? I mean, how can it help you? How can it be, a support system? So Title I Next is a cloud-based software solution, and it really is designed to support your workload, reduce some of your workload, and streamline the administration of your Title I program. I am a former teacher. I was also a Title I instructional coach, also an administrator in multiple schools. So I understand, and some of us on the call were as well from PCG, but we definitely understand so much that goes on throughout the day in your lives as educators. And this program and this solution is really designed to help streamline that. So the solution provides documentation management, and it really supports the compliance monitoring for all the Title I programs, the central office administration, and all the related departments and related tasks that you all must cover each day. The platform also supports central office administrators so that they're able to quickly evaluate, retrieve, and approve, because we know approvals are timely and they're important, an unlimited number of office documents. So if you think about the times in which I've been in education for quite some time, we've got hard copies and in bankers boxes and in file cabinets and all different places. This is really a solution that allows you to store that in the cloud for an unlimited amount of time. So that's important. And it really eliminates the need for that hard copy storage. There's also the ability to provide access for multiple approvals. So not just onesie twosies, but multiple approvals at one time. There's certainly a real-time status report available, and there's also the ability to filter analytics so that you can see, who's met what approval in real time. And then connected to that, and it's not showing on this particular slide, but there are also automated email reminders and notification alerts, so that again these approvals can be taken care of on a timely in a timely manner. An administrator dashboard is provided as well, so that if you think about a dashboard in the true sense of the word, it shows everything at one time, just like the dashboard in your vehicle or the dashboard on your computer. You're able to see in real time everything that's taken place. Real-time monitoring, I kind of mentioned that above, but also alerts, because again, you're busy and sometimes things tend to slip through the cracks, but you will receive alerts, letting you know what is outstanding. And then Claire is on the call this morning, but she helps support our help desk and our training, because the last thing that we want to do is provide you all with this fantastic solution, but not give you any hand holding and any support. So we're not going to do that at all. We're going to do the direct opposite and provide you with training once you opt into the solution. And we also have live help desk support. I'm going to turn it over to Claire now.
Hi, everyone. So just to talk about what comes next after Jennifer's giving you just sort of a snapshot of what Title I Next can provide for you and your districts. This is just a brief introduction. There's much more to come throughout early 2024. So please keep your eye out for commissioners' messages on Mondays. We'll have more information there. We'll have more webinars. So Erin will have us back and we can talk more to you all and to others who haven't been able to attend today. We'll continue to communicate through the Title I monthly newsletters. And the big news is that we'll have 2 opt-in periods in the spring and early winter. So after the holidays in January, there'll be an opportunity to opt in. And then again in March, there'll be another opt-in period. So more information to come on those. And when you do opt in, then there'll be, of course, as Jennifer mentioned, training sessions. So it's not just a platform that will hand off to you. We'll obviously give you support and training around how to use the platform. The QR code is here for more information if you have the opportunity to scan that now. But we will be, I think, Erin, sending out this this slideshow after for more information. You can scan it then. We also have a one sheet, just kind of information, what we reviewed today, as well as some URLs to head to for more information about the opt-in period and more about the platform itself. And I think that's it for today for us. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. Again, this is an introduction, but we will be, hopefully this will just be the first time we'll be communicating with you all, and look forward to working with everyone in Kentucky. Jennifer, anything else?
Not quite. Just if there are any questions right now, Erin, if we have a couple of minutes, if not, certainly welcome to send any questions to Erin, and she'll get them over to us. And as Claire mentioned, if you had an opportunity to scan that QR code, you can go and scan there and put your name and your information in. And then there's a final question that says, do you have more questions? And then we can answer those on the spot as well.
We do have one question that came into the chat real quick. And I know this applies to several of our districts who have been using Title I CRATE, and they've asked how is that similar or different to that program. They're really excited about having a resource that would be free to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is great that it's free. And I hate to put these people on the spot, but Blake is a colleague of ours who has been more like an architect, actually an architect of Title I Next. So Blake, anything that you would add in terms of the similarities or differences between Title I Next and Title I CRATE?
Yeah, I knew this question was going to come to me. It has been a number of years since I have seen or learned any new information about Title I CRATE, so I can't really do a direct comparison. I would say it's going to be pretty familiar to you. The interface is going to look pretty different, but overall the usage and functionality is going to be pretty similar. I would say the biggest difference would be our terminology. So they're going to use a lot of words like crates. And we're going to use words like folders and requirements, but the general functionality is very similar.
Thanks, Blake. I appreciate that.
All right, I think that's all we have for right now. But as Jennifer said, you can send any questions on to me or use that QR code and ask them there, and we will get those answered for you. And we're just really excited about this new opportunity.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on to our main topics for today. First up is going to be planning for revised allocations. And the first thing I want to say right off the bat is that revised allocations have not been uploaded into GMAP yet. We don't have a specific date of when they'll be uploaded. We just like to prepare you around this time of year. So we know that Title I funds are appropriated to USAID by Congress each year, but that amount can be adjusted throughout the year. We have the base allocations determined by USAID, and that's based on the tentative estimates of formula children. That data comes from the Census Bureau. It's also based on the hold harmless amounts and the qualification criteria for the 4 different funding pots that make up your final Title I allocation. So the original application is a tentative amount. That's the application that you've been working on most recently. And that is tentative because not all of the census data is final when we release that application in GMAP. Now, once all of that census data is finalized, USAID releases the final allocation, and KDE goes in and calculates, issues all the final amounts to districts, and we upload those into GMAP for districts whose tentative applications have received full consolidated consultant approval. So that's one of the reasons we're trying to be pretty vigilant with you and get you to go in and make those changes and get your tentative application approved, so that when these allocations are ready, yours is going to be uploaded as soon as possible. Now, districts whose allocations have changed from the tentative amount are going to need to go in and make some revisions to their applications. Changes in a district's allocation are not based on an increase or a decrease in your poverty percentage, your enrollment numbers, your free and reduced price lunch numbers, none of that stuff that is reported by the district. Enrollment numbers and low income numbers are what you use to determine the rank order and how you're going to serve your schools. They're not used to determine the overall amount of the award. And I'm probably going to say that multiple times during this webinar. So for example, sometimes a district reviews their data and they see, oh, my free and reduced price lunch numbers have increased at each school. That must mean that my Title I allocation is going to increase. And that is a common misconception. That's not necessarily true. There are multiple variable factors that affect each district's allocation. So this is not an apples to apples comparison. It's really important to remember that. We do have more detailed explanations of the entire allocation process and timeline, what are formula children and hold harmless rates, all of that stuff. That is in our new Title I coordinator training video and PowerPoint, which is on our documents and resources webpage. So we're not going to get really into the weeds on all of that right now. And I do also want to point out that no district is reduced below its hold harmless level as long as Congress has appropriated adequate funding. So not every page of the application is going to require revision when, actually, I think I just skipped a page. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so when these revised allocations are going to GMAP, what exactly do you have to do? As I mentioned, you are probably going to have to make some revisions to your application. And I already mentioned that that revised allocation amount is not going to be uploaded until your tentative application has that full approval. So the next slide is going to have more specifics on what needs to be done, but the pages you definitely want to pay attention to are district set-asides, the PPA page, services to private schools for those of you who serve private schools, and the budget page. So on the district set-aside page, we want to make sure that the required amount that has to be reserved for parent and family engagement, for those of you who that applies to, aligns with the amount that's been budgeted in 310 KM on the budget page. And especially if your amount has gone down, make sure that at least 90% of that required 1% is still being distributed to the schools. I also want to remind you, again, particularly if your allocation does decrease a bit, you cannot decrease your homeless set-aside amount. Once that amount is approved, that is the amount that needs to be spent on those students experiencing homelessness. On the PPA page, check your remaining balance. Make sure that it is as close to zero as possible without being negative, and you will know if it's negative because the number will be in parentheses there. You can adjust or address remaining balances by either adjusting the PPA amounts. You want to make sure that you are still maintaining that rank and serve order, and or adjusting the amounts that have been reserved on the district set aside page. And that's something, if you have questions about, your consultant can help you with that. For those of you who break down your GMAP application budget by location, you'll then want to be sure that the total amounts budgeted for each location still align with the district set-aside page and with each school's allocation on the PPA page. Check the total amounts for services for private schools on the private schools page. Those will change as well. And ensure that those totals align with the 310KP and 310KN budgets. And of course, as I've already said multiple times, make sure that your budget still aligns with the rest of your application. Now, you may also need to make other changes to other pages depending on how the revised allocation amount impacts your program. And as a reminder, we do have a series of GMAP training videos on our Documents and Resources webpage that provide in-depth explanations and walkthroughs of each page of the application. And of course, as I said, you can always reach out to your Title I consultant with questions, and that's what we're here for. So we're going to transition from thinking about the current school year, believe it or not, to thinking about the 24-25 school year, and how the census data is used to estimate poverty percentages and determine each district's hold harmless rate. That's the rate that allows you to begin making some rough plans for next school year. So the other question that we get a lot when these revised allocations come out is, well, my free and reduced price lunch numbers went up. Why did my allocation decrease? That's going to come back to that census data, which is the basis for the Title I Part A allocation. Districts use that internal poverty data, direct certification, free and reduced price lunch, household income forms, etc., to rank and serve their schools within the district. The census data that is used as a basis for the allocations, this is not based on any data that districts report to KDE or data that KDE reports to USED. So like I said before, an increase in those numbers is not an indication that your overall allocation is going to increase. So we're going to keep on talking about this census data and how we can use it to plan for the next school year. The data will be released in a Commissioner's Monday message. I will then also send out a direct email to coordinators. And again, this information has also not been released yet, but I do want you to be on the lookout for that because it usually comes around this time of year in the coming weeks. So USED will use the 2022 census data to calculate the school year 24-25 allocations for Title I Part A. And KDE will issue this data for planning purposes for next school year. And I want to note that whatever numbers are included in that data are tentative and, of course, subject to change. But you can use them to calculate an estimate of next year's allocations. The census data estimates are based on a statistical model, and that model incorporates information from a variety of sources that can include, but is not limited to, administrative records taken from federal income tax returns, the most recent decennial census data, updates to population estimates, etc. The Census Bureau uses all of that information to determine the tentative poverty estimates that it provides to USED. And there's no report like an Infinite Campus that you can go in and run and somehow recreate this information. So when you get this information, you'll see kind of a couple pages of just information that comes directly from USED, and then you're going to see a chart that looks similar to the one on the screen. So you'll be able to just find your district listed on the left, and you will see the tentative census estimates for the number of children ages 5 to 17 in poverty and the number of children ages 5 to 17 overall. Then those numbers are going to be used to calculate the tentative poverty percentage. These percentages are reported to 2 decimal places. They are not rounded up to the nearest whole number, and they are used to determine your hold harmless percentage. The hold harmless percentage is the number that you're going to use to start planning for next year. This amount is variable, and it represents the rock bottom dollar amount that a district may receive in a fiscal year, of course, contingent upon Congress appropriating adequate funding. So districts whose census poverty percentage is 30% or greater, they're going to have a 95% hold harmless percentage, meaning they can look at this year's final allocation and know that for next year they should get at least 95% of that amount. Districts who are between 15 and 30% poverty have a 90% hold harmless percentage, and districts below 15% have an 85% hold harmless percentage. So you will just multiply that percentage by your final 2024 allocation amount to give you an idea of the minimum amount that you should receive for next school year. Now, the document that we release will also have a column for school year 23-24's final census poverty percentage. I've not included it on here. We just include that as a reference. It does not have an impact on or a relationship to next year's allocation. And again, all of this is covered in much more detail in the new coordinator training webinar. So if we kind of look at the difference between that census poverty percentage and what we can gather based on information in the district, census poverty percentage, again, that is information gathered by the Census Bureau. It's estimates. They're based on those statistical models with information coming from a multitude of sources. And this is how USED determines your district allocations. Versus the district poverty percentage, that's based on data that you gather, that direct certification, free and reduced price lunch, all of that stuff. These are based on actual numbers, and the percentage is going to vary based on the method of calculation, whichever of those you've selected in your GMAP application. And again, these are the numbers that you use to rank and serve your schools. So I mentioned a moment ago that the document you're going to receive is going to have the final census poverty percentage for this school year. You can, and I think should, compare that to the tentative census poverty percentage for next school year and see if you can identify any patterns. You can also look at patterns and trends by comparing your district poverty data from year to year. What you can't do is compare census poverty percentages to district poverty percentages, because that's going to be like comparing apples to oranges. I've got a chart on the next slide that's going to highlight really the lack of relationship between these two numbers. Okay, so I just wanted to show you some examples of how the census poverty percentage numbers compare to the district poverty percentage numbers that are in GMAP. So the poverty percentages in GMAP we know are based on either free and reduced price lunch, direct certification, all of those things. So what I did was I went in and I just randomly selected a few districts, and I made sure to pick some that use free and reduced price lunch, some that use direct certification, et cetera. And I compared their final census poverty percentage and their GMAP district poverty percentage from last school year. And I compared that to the tentative census poverty percentage and the GMAP district poverty percentage for this year. And I've also just gone in and I've added some little arrows so you can see quickly if that percentage increased or decreased from last year to this year. So if we look at this, we can see that some of our districts saw either an increase or a decrease in both. I think districts B, C, G, and I. While others maybe saw one increase and the other decrease, such as districts A, D, E, and H. Sometimes there's a relatively small change to one of the numbers, but a larger change in the other. So for example, if we look at District B, we can see that their census poverty percentage increased by 0.01%, but the district poverty percentage increased by 3%. That's a pretty big difference there. So we can also see that there's a lot of variation in these percentages, and there is no trick or formula that we can use to get from one percentage to the next. They are completely different. So when the document is released, be sure to read through it very carefully. The Census Bureau always provides a challenge period for local school districts to review the poverty and population data. And you can look for certain non-statistical errors. These errors can fall into two categories. The first is processing input data or running the estimation models or programs, or some sort of error in preparing or processing the information to define those geographic school district boundaries. If you think there is an error in your district's data, you can contact SAPI, that's the Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates branch at the Census Bureau, for further information on how to challenge the data. KDE does not have the ability to go in and revise the census estimates. Only the U.S. Census Bureau can do that. So if you think there's something wrong, don't contact KDE. You've got to contact SAPI using the information on that document. The deadline to submit these challenges has not been released yet. It'll be in that document once it's available. And we will, of course, provide reminders in future newsletters and webinars. I will say that the deadline is typically in mid-March. I went back and looked at the past few years, and it's been March 15th, March 16th, March 8th. So we can probably guess that it's going to be sometime around then. I will also say that generally the Census Bureau does not make changes to the numbers except in the case of data error. It's always a good idea to compare last year's release of data to see how it compares to this year's data and make notes of any trends. For example, a downward trend in your census poverty percentage could eventually result in a lower hold harmless percentage. So if you have been at 32 and then you're at 31 and now you're at 30, you could maybe drop down to the next lower hold harmless percentage. So you want to keep that in mind and consider how it will impact your programs. Now, the current school year's notification is still posted on our webpage, but once the new one is available, that will be removed and replaced with the new one. So what you might want to do is go ahead and download a copy of that so you have it as a reference for when the new one comes out, and you can use that as a comparison if you'd like. Right, so now we're going to look for questions, and I know we've got some because I was watching the chat. Let's see. Okay, so I see Kristen's asked, for those of you who've previously used Title I Crate, do you know how that works about saving years past data or information? I, of course, don't know about that, but if someone else does, you've maybe already put it in the chat and I didn't see, or you can send that to me and I'll send that out. Okay. Yep, okay, looks like Mary was on it answering these questions. Believe there's an option to save as a PDF, so she's gonna have to check. Yeah, you can create a zip file. All right, we're answering all my questions. This is perfect. And then can we subscribe to the Commissioners Monday message? Yes, it is on the website. Any of those KDE newsletters, you go down to the bottom and there's a blue subscribe button, and I see that Mary has put a link to that in the chat. So appreciate that, Mary. You're doing all the heavy lifting for me. And let me check the email really quickly to see if there's any. I'm not seeing any questions there, but of course you can send those to me later if you think of one. All right, be sure to mark your calendars. We've got our first 6 webinars of 2024 on the schedule. So the next one is going to be Thursday, January 25th, of course, at 10 a.m. Eastern. We do still want your feedback. We want to learn more about what is helpful. What do you want to see more of in newsletters, webinars, resources, things like that. You can, of course, send that feedback directly to me, to your Title I consultant, or you can use that optional anonymous webinar feedback survey that is always linked in our Title I newsletter. And I'm not seeing any more questions, so I will go ahead and say thank you for joining us this morning, and everybody have a happy and restful holiday season, and we will see you in 2024. Thanks.